Deontic logic, the branch of logic concerning ethical concepts such as obligation and permission, has faced significant challenges, both internal and external. Internally, early attempts to formalize intuitions about obligation led to paradoxes and puzzles, resulting in a proliferation of different deontologic systems. Externally, criticisms have been raised regarding the relevance of deontic logic to ethical reasoning about real-life obligations. However, Horty's work in agency and deontic logic represents a notable advancement in the field. The book addresses long-standing internal issues, while also establishing connections with external areas of research, such as decision theory and utilitarian ethical theory. Despite its technical sophistication, the book is highly accessible, featuring clear explanations and numerous examples. One significant contribution of the book is the development of a framework for analyzing problematic inferences related to obligations. Horty emphasizes the need for deontic logic to distinguish between evaluative statements about what ought to be the case and prescriptive statements about what specific agents ought to do. While previous deontic logics attempted to equate these types of statements, Horty argues that they are fundamentally distinct. For instance, Horty illustrates the failure of equating statements like Arthur ought to visit his mother with, it ought to be that Arthur visits his mother. Using a simple example involving a gambling decision, Horty demonstrates that the possible world semantics commonly applied to evaluative statements does not hold for prescriptive statements involving actions by agents. This distinction highlights the limitations of previous approaches and underscores the need for a more nuanced understanding of deontic reasoning. Horty's work in agency and deontic logic introduces a fresh semantics for obligations, drawing on the formal semantics for agency developed by Belknap, Perloff, and Shu in Facing the Future. The initial chapters of Horty's book elucidate Belknap's branching time semantics for stit sentences, which are statements like agent sees to it that P. Horty then explores combining Belknap's framework with the traditional possible world semantics, by interpreting a ought to see to it that P as, it ought to be that a sees to it that P. This involves replacing possible worlds with histories, which are sequences of moments, and evaluating statements based on the best or optimal histories containing a given moment. While this approach resolves some traditional puzzles, it encounters the gambling objection discussed earlier. Horty overcomes this challenge by integrating basic concepts from decision theory, particularly dominance reasoning, into his semantics for obligations. He defines dominance such that one action dominates another, if its payoff is at least as good under every circumstance, and strictly better under some circumstances. In essence, according to Horty's proposal, I ought to see to it that P is true at a moment, if every available action that fails to guarantee P is dominated by an action that does guarantee P. This solution resolves the gambling problem, because refraining from gambling is not dominated by gambling. Further chapters of the book extend this analysis to conditional obligations, group oughts, and strategic oughts involving sequences of choices. Horty provides clear definitions, examples, and logical relationships, before applying the framework to analyze competing philosophical claims, drawn from deontic logic and wider philosophical literature. Beyond addressing puzzles about agency and obligation, Horty's work sheds light on metaphysical issues, such as the causal independence of agents. The book's most significant applications, however, lie in clarifying ethical controversies. Although Horty's theory leans towards utilitarianism, he demonstrates the flexibility to formulate and compare various act-and-rule utilitarian principles. Notably, his framework lacks a means to represent probabilistic information, but still manages to define plausible versions of utilitarianism that agree on certain actions' rightness. Through visual aids like diagrams and stit models, Horty's examples aid in clarifying complex issues, enabling readers to appreciate the framework's flexibility and potential range. One critique of agency and deontic logic is its emphasis on utilitarian ethical theories, which may limit its applicability to other ethical frameworks like contractarian approaches. While Horty's modeling of utilitarianism without taking sides is reasonable, extending this even-handed approach to contrast utilitarianism with other ethical theories could enrich the discussion. Incorporating contractarian models within the STIT framework could fully leverage game-theoretic insights and provide a more comprehensive analysis of ethical theories. In modeling contractarian theories, it's imperative to allow for the evaluation of actions or histories relative to different agents or groups of agents. This entails moving away from a single numerical evaluation function to a preference ordering that may only be partial. The assumption that each history possesses a single agent-independent numerical value presupposes a totally ordered social welfare function, which aligns with each agent's individual welfare function. However, this assumption is only justifiable within a utilitarian context, and fails to account for conflicts between individual utility maximization and collective welfare, which have plagued rational choice theory. Horty's work demonstrates that under orthodox act utilitarianism, if a group collectively makes a choice that is optimal or right at a given moment, then each individual in the group must also be making an optimal choice. This finding seemingly negates the possibility of scenarios like prisoners' dilemmas, indicating the need for a more comprehensive framework to model such situations. Certain examples provided by Horty appear to presuppose a distinction between individual utility and overall welfare. For instance, the gambling problem discussed earlier assumes that the outcome where agent gambles and wins $10 is superior to the outcome where it declines the gamble and retains just $5. However, this assessment holds true only when evaluations are made solely by A. If the utility of the bookie is given equal weight, assuming utility is proportional to monetary gain or loss for small sums, the example becomes a zero-sum game, and all outcomes are deemed equally satisfactory. This distinction between individual welfare and collective welfare is crucial and should be preserved in our modeling approaches. While the gambling problem can be modified to address objections, such as by considering a decision involving the allowance or prohibition of research with potential for universal benefit, but also catastrophic harm, the fundamental point remains. The distinction between individual and collective welfare warrants consideration in our modeling endeavors.